Diana, the eldest member of our TG support club here in Ottawa, faithfully attends our biweekly meetings. She often mentions that the first and third Saturdays of each month are the highlights of her life at the veterans' home where she resides. Diana endured the North African campaign in 1943 as a tank commander, sustaining severe burns. She later participated in the Anzio landing in Italy before being reassigned to England for training ahead of the Normandy D-Day landings. Unfortunately, her luck changed there, leading to a 3-year hospital stay. Now, Diana's hand trembles, and she appreciates Cheryl's assistance with her eye makeup. We all enjoy listening to her stories, and Cheryl has become a close friend. One day, Cheryl asked Diana a curious question, prompting us all to gather around as she escorted Diana to our small stage. It was a long time ago. Even at my age, the desire to dress remains strong. Well, perhaps compulsion is a more accurate word. It never diminishes. You youngsters in the audience might think that transvestism is solely your domain. But as you age, you'll find that simply looking like an old woman becomes preferable to clinging to youth. Now, where was I? Yes. I was about to recount the first time my mother caught me in her clothes and makeup. Since that moment, I've continued dressing. Practice makes perfect, they say. It's been at least half a century since I last felt the urge to present as anything other than myself. And now that I'm retired, I can dress as I please most of the time, no longer needing to adhere to office norms. I must say, skirts feel far more comfortable than pants, especially in this wheelchair. And for someone like me, who now prefers sitting to standing, a long skirt is much more practical. Yes, beneath this skirt, I still possess all my male attributes, and they still function as intended, unlike my legs. I've never desired to transition, I simply enjoy dressing as a woman. I've strayed from my point once more. One of the trials of old age, you see, I digress often. My mother first discovered me in her attire when I was 13, during the Great Depression. Though I didn't realize it then, looking back, my childhood was modest. Christmas gifts came mostly from my godmother or were handmade by my parents. A homemade wooden scooter stands out in my memory. We lacked a car, telephone, and electricity, though we did have gas lamps in the kitchen and parlor. But it was a good childhood. By the time I was 13 and fitting into my mother's clothes, I had been dressing for years. With no sisters and my cousin's family having moved away, my mother's wardrobe became my only option. I attended an all-boys school in Manchester, England, known for its strong drama program. No, I haven't strayed too far off topic this time. Every term, every boy had to participate in a play, 3 plays a year. While most performed in the class play, those with talent were encouraged by teachers to audition for the school play. True to Shakespearean tradition, all roles were played by boys. In my first term, I auditioned for the school production of A Midsummer Night's Dream and was cast as Titania, the Fairy Queen. Hard to believe, looking at me now, isn't it? But I played the part, and I played it well. In rehearsals, I may have been stiff, but once I donned Titania's costume for the dress rehearsal, I came alive. I've always found that clothes greatly enhance one's performance. You might assume that the jocks at school would have tormented me for playing female roles, but that wasn't the case. Every boy, including the jocks, had to take on a female role at some point during the year. No one escaped this tradition, and if a jock bullied smaller boys excessively, he might find himself cast in such a role as well. I turned out to have a knack for playing female characters in Shakespeare's plays and even in some more contemporary works. Even after my voice changed, I continued portraying women, and one of my standout performances was as Gwendolen in Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. By the time I was 13, my parents and my brother had seen me on stage in skirts. Since we didn't own a car, we walked almost everywhere. It took my father about 30 minutes to walk to work, and I needed 15 minutes to get to school, longer in snowy or rainy weather. Riding the tram, or streetcar, into town was a rare treat. The fare was a penny for adults and half that for children, which was often too expensive for us to indulge in frequently. Most of our clothes were handmade. My mother took pride in her treadle-operated sewing machine, which she used to stitch our garments. Only my father's suits were purchased, mainly from the Salvation Army thrift shop. Look at me now! Sitting in my wheelchair, dressed in a silk blouse, tweed skirt, and draped with a pashmina throw. And there's my mink coat hanging on the coat rack. You wouldn't guess that I once wore my clothes until they were beyond repair. Oops, I've gone off track again. My apologies. I'll try to stick to the point. By 13, I was a seasoned performer. I could walk, sit, and talk like a woman, and I was skilled at applying stage makeup. At school, I had already acquired the nickname Diana, derived from my initials DB, which seemed fitting for someone who consistently played female roles. I began experimenting with my mother's clothes when I was home alone. Then one day, my mother returned unexpectedly early. I hadn't heard her. There was no car door slamming to announce her arrival, no clicking heels on the sidewalk. She wore rubber-soled flats for walking around, saving her heels for evenings. I was engrossed in my book, completely absorbed, wearing a cotton dress, lisle stockings, and lipstick when she walked in and caught me red-handed. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Tears streamed down my face. Was this part of my role-playing as a girl? She approached me, and I stood up, just slightly taller than her in my stockinged feet. My mother enveloped me in a tight hug, her thumb gently stroking the side of my neck. There. Don't cry. There's nothing to cry about. I continued sobbing as my mother guided me to the couch, sitting beside me with her arm around me. When my sobs finally subsided, she stood up and led me by the hand into the kitchen. I think we both need a cup of tea. The quintessential English response to any crisis. We sat at the kitchen table and drank strong tea with milk and sugar. I disliked tea prepared that way today, but then it was comforting. After the first cup, I began to wonder what would come next. What kind of lecture awaited me? I was calm now, prepared to face whatever consequences lay ahead. It was bound to be something severe. My mother hadn't scolded me in the heat of the moment, so whatever she had to say now could only be worse. If you're going to wear my clothes and makeup, you should learn to do it properly. That was all. She hugged me again. From that day onward, the lessons began. I quickly learned that applying lipstick for the stage was not the same as wearing it casually. One of the joys of acting, for me, had always been wearing lipstick. What girl doesn't love lipstick? My mother herself wore minimal makeup, just lipstick and powder. Perhaps anything more seemed too extravagant during the Depression years, but both my parents were involved in the local drama society, where she frequently did makeup for their performances. Despite her minimal personal use, she was well versed in the art of eye makeup, rouge, as it was then called, and other cosmetics. The lessons continued earnestly. A 13-year-old doesn't wear makeup. If you're going to wear it, you should look like an 18-year-old. Besides, I have no clothes suitable for a 13-year-old. Thus, my mother embarked on the journey of transforming me into an 18-year-old girl. Of course, miniskirts were not yet invented back then. I see all you girls now in your minis, and I doubt you can even fathom a time when they didn't exist. My skirts, actually my mother's skirts, ended at knee length, most of them cut on the bias. Mom took pride in her skill with bias cutting, which was considered the height of fashion then and more challenging than sewing along the grain of the fabric. Mostly, she expected me to wear her dresses, especially the older ones that hadn't been repaired as frequently as my own clothes. Occasionally, though, we would pore over patterns together, and she'd make me a dress of my own. This was before the era of nylon. Imagine, no nylon stockings, panties, bras, or slips. The sensation of nylon against our shaped bodies was yet to come. Instead, there were silk stockings, silk knickers, never called panties back then, silk slips, but no silk bras. They were too costly for our modest budget. I made do with cotton knickers, cotton bras, lisle stockings, and cotton slips, no lace, no embroidery until my mother taught me how to embroider. And all these garments, except bras, were crafted by my mother at her sewing machine. Gradually, my posture improved. I practiced walking with a book on my head. "Pull your shoulders back, Diana," she would say. Yes, she had started calling me Diana when dressed, both of us wary she might slip up and call me Diana while I was in male attire with my father or brother around. She never did, though. Throw out your chest. A woman's bosom is her most prized asset. Don't try to hide it by slouching or crossing your arms. Eyeshadow was rare back then, except for theatrical use, and it was from her stage makeup kit that my mother found a bit of earth-colored eyeshadow for me. It was greasy, typical of stage makeup, but a touch of powder fixed that. Even today, I prefer earth tones in my eye makeup, rarely green, despite my green eyes, and certainly never blue, as Cheryl can attest. Slowly, I learned to pass as an 18-year-old girl named Diana, though I was not yet 14. One day, Mom took me to the Salvation Army thrift shop. I wore a plain white cotton blouse, much like the one I have on now, albeit cotton instead of silk like this one, paired with a bias-cut striped skirt in my favorite earth tones, lisle stockings held up by garters, not the decorative kind you girls wear, but elastic ones around the leg, no jewelry, as we had none, and makeup that, for those times amidst the Great Depression, was rather bold, a vivid scarlet lipstick that my mother had bought for me. I remember every detail of that day vividly. It was an adventure for me, my first outing dressed this way, even if I wore sneakers. It was the day my mother purchased my first pair of heels for me, as I could no longer fit into her only pair. We sifted through the bins, organized only by size. We headed to the section labeled 8, nearly the largest women's shoes available at that time, and thankfully they fit me, quite unlike today, when I need size 12 wide. Shoe after shoe came out of the bin. If either of us liked one, we hunted for its pair. Eventually, we settled on a pair of black patent pumps with 3-inch heels. Not stilettos, those came with the advent of miniskirts by Emma Jones. No, these had broad Cuban heels, which was a relief. I can't imagine managing in stilettos even now, when I can barely stand in flats for more than a few moments. My mother paid a whopping 6 pence for those shoes, a princely sum back then that could dent our family budget. Proudly, I walked out of the store in them, a stark contrast to my brown skirt, but who cared? She stored my dresses and shoes in her wardrobe, we had no closets, and my underwear in her drawers. Rarely did I dress without her presence after that. My dressing habits evolved over time. I recall the end of World War II, when nylon stockings became available, and I purchased my first pair. By then, serving in the 1st Armored Cavalry Regiment, opportunities to dress were scarce. Yet, I gradually amassed a collection of nylon lingerie, discreetly stashed in my duffel bag. In my youth, I could dress elegantly in a long evening gown, crimson nails, scarlet lipstick, full makeup, and 3-inch heels, still no stilettos, but only on leave. I grew fond of the gentle rustle of nylon slip against nylon stockings. Pantyhose came into fashion later as a solution for wearing miniskirts, but by then I was too old for such short skirts. I preferred looking chic in cocktail dresses or smart in skirt suits. My makeup could be subtle for daytime or more dramatic for evenings. Over time, I swapped scarlet lipstick and nail polish for warmer, earth-toned hues, echoing the eye makeup style I adopted under my beloved mother's guidance. With a corset, I achieved a sleek figure akin to a runway model, and my modest bust, my preferred silicone forms were size B, enhanced that silhouette. At 6 feet tall, I couldn't be anything but statuesque. Those days are far behind me now. Yes, I can effortlessly pass as a woman, but as an older woman, not the elegant model of my youth. I can't wear a corset in this confounded wheelchair. Have you ever tried sitting on the edge of a wheelchair? That's how you must sit when wearing a corset. Sometimes, for nostalgia's sake, I wear it at the home, but if I want to go out, I have to leave it behind. My beloved black leather catsuit, once my attire as a dominant femme, and the chastity belt I wore in another role, are relics of the past. A catsuit looks absurd in a wheelchair, and with my current health issues, a chastity belt is the least of my concerns. Now, you girls have heard more than enough from me. Thank you for inviting me to address your TG Club meeting. Such clubs didn't exist in my youth. Now, nurse, if you could assist me with my mother's mink coat, we can leave these young ladies to their dancing, and you can take me back to the veterans' home. I bought her that coat just 2 years before she passed away, her first fur coat. Every time I wear it, I think of her and her reaction to seeing me in her clothes. Good night, everyone.